Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. This is episode 31, and we are going to be talking to Kyle Lam. He is a sound practitioner based in South Orange County in Southern California. He does these incredible sound baths that you really have to experience to really get the full effect of what they can actually do for you on an energetic basis. He is a Kundalini Yoga practitioner, but most importantly, and this is something that we are definitely going to be talking about throughout this episode, is that he is one of the few male practitioners in sound healing. And this is significant because divine masculine energy really needs a place in this spiritual community. And there aren't a lot of communities that support uniquely divine masculine energies. So, Kyle is going to talk to us a little bit about that as well. Kyle, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Annette. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and share my journey about sound bath and sound healing.
Yeah, of course. So let's just sort of dive right into the sort of background, because the one thing that fascinates me the most is sort of the journey that we all take in order to get to where we are now, right? So for your spiritual journey, your spiritual awakening, tell us how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, what's interesting is that even to this day, I still am trying to pinpoint the exact moment of the awakening too. And I think for myself, I am from Chinese heritage.
Mhm.
And in many ways, I do believe that being Chinese, having that Asian ancestry, really has allowed me to become very spiritually active since I was a child, too. I've always been very fascinated with the teachings of the Buddha. I used to go to a lot of Buddhist temples when I was younger. I would engage in Dharma talks with the monks. And even from a very early age, I started meditating.
Mm.
But it wasn't until I was in college where I had the opportunity to spend 5 days at a Buddhist temple here in Los Angeles. And the program that we were in allowed us to be trained as novice monks. And so we spent a lot of time with the Venerable there. We did morning meditations, evening meditations, afternoon meditations, walking meditations, laying down meditations, and got a chance to really experience what it's like to be trained as a monk. And that was one of the biggest inspirations to continue living a very spiritual life. But no doubt when I started doing Kundalini Yoga around 2015, that's what really catalyzed my awakening too.
Mm.
I've delved in many different types of modalities before from, I did some sound baths here and there. I did meditation classes, some breathwork classes, but it wasn't until I found Kundalini Yoga where everything tied together from there.
Right.
And I was able to take every bits and pieces of what I've learned and bring it into the world of Kundalini Yoga and really embody the essence of all the teachings that I have. And that is really what has not only created the kind of spiritual man I am today, but it continues giving me all the teachings that I need whenever I face any sort of obstacles or challenges in my life.
So tell me a little bit about how you can use that Kundalini yoga practice to face challenges. I'm curious about that, because I know that through the practice there are various different tools and modalities you can use. What are your go-to modalities for that?
Kundalini Yoga, for people who are not familiar with it, they call it the yoga for the mind or yoga for awareness. And it's a lot less about physical movement through the body where you see like in vinyasa or yin, it's about a flow. Whereas Kundalini Yoga, it's more about really connecting your breath with your mind and this energy that's within your body too. And a lot of these classes in Kundalini Yoga really incorporate heavy breath work and, more importantly, the use of mantras.
Mm,
So we do a lot of chanting and singing in Kundalini Yoga. From it, it allows us to really develop a stronger sense of connection to the higher realms, to the angelic realms,
mm,
to God, or whatever way you want to call it. And so there's this sense of faith and trust in the higher powers that you'll be okay and that you'll have all the tools that you need to as well. If anyone has ever gone to a Kundalini Yoga class, you'll be familiar that within that 60 to 90-minute time frame, there's this incredible high that you get from this surge of energy that we're really drawing from the Kundalini, from the base of our spine, flowing up through it and expanding throughout our body. And so we're essentially being enveloped in this beautiful white light that's being gifted to us from the divine.
mm,
And from that, we can use that divine light to carry ourselves forward in the manner that we need to carry ourselves in. And I think for me personally, there has been a much more deeper connection with my higher selves, with my angels too. And it's given me a chance to listen to them more clearly, but also have a lot more trust in them too as well, that they're with me, they're always with me, and that they're protecting me, guiding me, and ensuring that what I do really has the purest intention for my highest self.
right. Yeah, and it's so beautiful because when you get into that connected space, like that is when, as you said, like all of those challenges, all of those things, they literally just fall away. They really do. And the challenge we have as humans a lot of the time is to to actually get into that balanced state and then connect to the divine, connect to our angelic team and everything else. And once we're there, everything's great and we can get the messages that we need. But the challenge is always the practice and getting to that space. You know, sometimes people are just too busy or they forget to connect. And also when you're in a challenging space, connecting is sometimes difficult. So Kundalini yoga is not something that I've partaken in. So really it makes me feel like so happy for all the different like modalities that people can use to connect. So for me, I connect through the Akashic records. That's what I do. That's how I'm able to connect with
Mm,
everything. That's not going to resonate with everybody, right? And that's part of the reason why I do this podcast as well, is because everybody's going to have a different way in which they connect, in which they are able to get through some of these challenges throughout life. And yeah, it sounds like Kundalini yoga is one of those beautiful modalities that you can use.
yeah, it's has been for me the biggest ego reduction.
No, yeah.
And I come from a very traditional Chinese background, and so in growing up, there wasn't a lot of practices or conversations about becoming very comfortable with your inner selves. Being vulnerable. There's always a sense of being this really tough character, and focus on the material things that really are meant to enhance your life.
Mm,
What's interesting is that I actually grew up without a father.
okay.
My parents divorced when I was very, very young. So a lot of my upbringing was from my mother, and she immigrated from China, and she achieved the American dream. She worked really hard, but she has this concept of there has to be a linear path towards success, and a lot of it is to avoid and not deal with some of the more emotional and inner work and just push and carry forward. So from that upbringing, I developed a strong sense of like, okay, like I have to really push through for a lot of things and just be stronger and keep going after it. So when I started doing Kundalini Yoga, it was like the emergency brake got pulled on that, right?
Mm,
And I
mhm.
realized that one is the path that I was going on, the decisions I was making, the actions that I was doing, it was good for that time, but it wasn't something that was for me sustainable, and it caused a lot more disruption and disharmony in not only my personal life but even my professional life too as well. So when I started doing Kundalini Yoga, it was, like I said, the biggest ego reduction, and it gave me a lot of realizations of the patterns that I was doing,
Mm,
and it gave me also the encouragement to discontinue those actions and start working to build better habits for myself that would serve me best. And Kundalini Yoga, it's for everyone. There's no limitations or restrictions based on age or ethnicity or any kind of background too as well. What's interesting is that Kundalini Yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan, There's different varieties of variations of Kundalini Yoga, but this one in particular draws a lot of its mantras and its practices from the Sikh Dharma. And, for me, my mother immigrated from China in the 70s, and that was when communism was really starting to rise up and take power there. So there was a lot of abolishment of different religion, spiritual practices, even the history of Buddhism or Confucianism was expelled from any part of the culture too there.
Mm,
I never had a sense of faith growing up too. And I think in many ways that was what I was lacking in my life. And so even though I don't practice a lot of the Sikh Dharma, a lot of the mantras being used there are very dear to my heart. And when I chant and when I sing these mantras, it's very sacred to me. It's giving me a stronger connection to God and to the higher realms too.
yeah.
And that was something that no other practice has ever given me, even when I've done breath work or have been in an ayahuasca ceremony, for example. I always call it it's the bread and butter of my spiritual practice. It's the base foundation of who I am today, of the man I am today, and of course my spiritual practice too as well.
Beautiful. So then, do you want to sort of tie in where your musical background comes in and how you started integrating that with your spiritual practice?
Sure. So I have a strong musical background. When I was younger, I played piano for 8 years, and I also played clarinet in symphony orchestra and in marching band throughout junior high, high school, and a little bit in college too as well. And I also sung in junior master chorale for a little over a year. When I was younger, all those experience in music was really about performance and creating different and hosting concerts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I started doing Kundalini Yoga where I got a lot of inspiration to use that in a spiritual practice of sound healing. So in Kundalini Yoga, they always end every class with a gong, about 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
So the gong is very synchronous with Kundalini Yoga. So as my practice developed, my love of the gong also developed too as well. And that was the very first instrument that I became very acquainted with and I fell in love with. And I remember doing a gong workshop in LA a little while ago. And it was 4 hours of gonging and we learned different techniques and the emotional significance, the emotional impact of the gong has. And I remember I fell in love with it too.
Wow.
Fast forward about a year or so, I started attending a little bit more sound baths because at the time it was one of the easiest ways for me to not only relax, but to connect with myself in a really relaxed mode.
Mm,
And I think because I do have that musical background, I was really intrigued by how these notes, these melodies, and these harmonies were inducing me into a very deep meditative state. And I was very fascinated by it too.
mm.
And I began at the time helping out, being a part of a team of helpers for two notable sound healers in LA. And they became really good friends of mine too. And they also became like partially my mentors too as well. So I began playing with them a little bit too as well. And eventually I purchased my own sets of singing bowls. Very basic set, very small set of seven. And I just bought it just for myself to play at home.
Mhm.
My sound bath journey actually was just me playing for myself for about 6 or 7 months at my house. It started off with one bowl, then, two, then three, then I bought a set of seven. And then eventually I bought my very first gong. And when I first started doing sound baths and hosting it as an event, it was really just for fun. I never had any intentions on, doing sound baths as a job, as a way to serve the community. I just did it just for fun, for
Mhm.
myself, right? And I think sound bath is one of those things that I didn't really choose. I believe sound bath has chosen me because from there, my knowledge and experience with it grew very exponentially. And that's something that I tell people about when they're interested in learning about sound baths, right? That there's a lot of sacred wisdom that can come from it when you synchronize your energy really well with the instruments too.
Yeah.
I started doing sound baths in East LA once a week just for the local community there because at the time, that part of LA didn't really have any access to meditation or yoga or were even familiar with the concept of yoga or meditation.
Mhm.
So I did it there for a week, and having that weekly ability to serve community, to see how sounds interact with different backgrounds of people, to witnessing the emotional response, the physical response to it too, gave me a lot of the experience to create what I did now. And then, now my sound bath experience is it's pretty intense. It's not your average sound bath that people go to with a few bowls and maybe a gong. It's really meant to induce some very deep emotional work
Mhm.
in the process.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I'm feeling into it at the moment, and as you're speaking, I can feel that not only is it your background, your history, but your kundalini practice, all of the things that you have learned up until this point, you pour into your sessions each and every time. Yeah, it sounds like it's an incredible experience. So, I want to sort of back up a little bit because the one thing that you said that I think was really, really beautiful is that you were just doing it for fun. You were just doing the singing bowls for fun initially. And that's something that I think a lot of us forget is that that is actually where all of our divine direction is coming from, is that we need to follow the things that are fun for us and the things that bring us a lot of joy, right? As opposed to what we're conditioned to in society, which
Mhm.
is to do things just because we're meant to do them, or because, society
Mhm.
says we have to have a normal job or whatever it is. The fact that you were just following whatever was bringing you joy, and something that you found that was just a lot of fun, that's probably what opened the doors for you, right?
Right. Like I said, I never had any intentions on doing this full time. I just
Yeah.
did it as a passion project, right?
Yeah.
It was a way for me to explore music more, explore sound healing more, and just see where it was too. And I think in many ways, not only did I do it for fun, I did it because I believed it was necessary to do this for the community, especially the one that I was in at the time,
Mhm.
because if I knew how much it impacted me, then I knew it could impact other people too as well.
Right.
And also, I love meeting people. I love engaging with people. I love hearing people's stories. Hearing people's stories gives me a chance to understand who makes up our community and who makes up our world too.
Mhm.
So also hosting sound baths was a way for me to engage more with community too,
Mm.
and to engage more in conversation with the topics that really mean a lot to me, with emotions, with spirituality, with consciousness, with vulnerability. Those topics, I always love talking about them, even with my friends.
Mm. Yep.
So the way for me to, be more engaged in that conversation and not and encourage more people to be open about talking about stuff like that and to be open to sharing with either me or their friends or their family. And so that was also one of the reasons why I did it too.
Yeah. What is the like most surprising conversation you had during that time? I'm just curious. I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I am curious because I know a lot of times when you are in that space of being very open and sharing these conversations with people, a lot can really come out from conversations that you would have never expected to have this sort of either topic come up or information or story from a particular person that maybe you either just met or that you've known for a while?
There's a lot of common themes, I believe, that I've encountered
Mhm.
and sound baths. People go through a lot of tumultuous experiences, whether it's, a breakup, a divorce, a misunderstanding from their partner or their family. There isn't a connection with the community around them.
Mm.
And so there's a sense of loneliness
Yeah.
to them. So that's why they come to these events too as well. But the biggest impact that I've had, and it's not really about a conversation, so to speak, but I've had some people who have experienced some really detrimental health conditions
Mm.
that have become alleviated by coming to the sound bath. Now, of course, I'm no medical doctor, and there's no way I'm preaching that these have any kind of research medical benefits. All I can do is just share the experience that my participants have shared with me too. I had a woman with vertigo come to my sound baths, and she told me that she did a test before and after with her doctor. And after the sound bath concluded and finished, she took another test, and she said that her vertigo went away. Right.
Mm,
I've had women who have suffered from rheumatoid arthritis who, while the sound bath does not cure it completely, it does give them a lot of alleviation from it for a few days or even for a week or so.
sure.
And those are the ones that are really impactful for me because these are conditions and situations that we can relate to, that we see. There's millions of Americans, people in the world who suffer with arthritis, right? Who suffer from some kind of like health condition too.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of alleviation that you can get from it, from these events too. So those are the conversations and topics that I engage in that are the most rewarding and are the most stimulating too as well. I think because I've dabbled in this world of emotional transformation and vulnerability for so many years that in many ways being vulnerable is a very common thing for me now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like everyday talk for me. So when people come like, oh, like I really healed from this traumatic experience, or I'm going through a tough time right now, or something like that, it's almost something that I hear with every single sound bath, and it's amazing. So it's a commonality within the sound bath experience, but it's those specific ones that have a lot of more health benefits from it that I'm really drawn to.
Yeah. And speaking of the energetic health benefits, not only are you speaking physical health benefits, but also on an energetic level and on an emotional level. There are so many things going on in the world today that are sort of presenting the energy of duality, if you will. And we experience it every day. We see it in the news, we see it everywhere. That duality is, as we know, it's coming up to the surface so it can be cleared, right? And that is also that duality within ourselves. The divine feminine, divine masculine energy can kind of represent itself in that duality sometimes. And in the spiritual community, one of the things that you often see is that there are divine feminine circles out there. There's all kinds of support for feminine energies. You don't find a lot of support out there for masculine energies, whether you're in a male or female body, it doesn't matter, but for masculine energies to come together and to have experiences together. Ultimately, we all know that the goal is to be able to have that balance of those masculine and feminine energies within ourselves. And in order to do that, you have to acknowledge those particular masculine energies within yourself. So you have this beautiful, unique situation where you are creating these support circles for men and for masculine energies, and I would love to hear all about that and how you are supporting the masculine energies at this time and what happens during these sacred circles.
I'll give you a little bit of a background information that sparked all this too. So as I mentioned before, I grew up with a single mother, right? So
Mhm.
my concept of masculinity has always came from my mother, even though there have been some father figures in my life from the men that she's dated, but it's primarily come from her. So what's interesting is that I always associated masculinity with the feminine essence,
Oh,
right?
nice.
And because I grew up with a single mother too, I was a lot more comfortable with women or with the feminine too as well.
Mm.
And I've always had this very deeper understanding of women in the process. And when I was in high school and college, of course, I didn't know any better. I was young, and so I tried to associate myself with, like fraternities and like the bigger guys of of my school. So like, because that was my idea of what masculinity was,
Yeah.
right? And even when I was in my 20s, I mean, I'll admit to myself, I was very unconscious with my masculine energy.
Mm.
I was very unfaithful. I did not really treat women appropriately in the way that they should have, even though I had this really grand respect for women overall with the feminine energy from my mother.
Mm.
It wasn't until towards the later part of my 20s where it really began to hit me that what I was doing was very toxic. And at the time there was a lot of talk about toxic masculinity, and I was like, wow, this is who I am. Like this is what I've been doing, and
Mm.
I can't do this anymore. So what actually sparked my work with the sacred masculine energy was through tantra. And I remember I went to Miami just for a vacation a couple years ago. Right before that, I had an incident where I really broke down a lot because I realized that my masculine energy has been broken down completely.
Mm.
And as much as I tried to use what I have in my toolbox through Kundalini breathwork and all that jazz to try to figure out what I need to do next, I had no idea. I was completely lost. And that's when I realized I needed to take a different approach. And in some ways, I needed to take a little bit more of an extreme approach as well. So I ended up connecting with a tantrika over Miami, and I did a couple sessions with her, and I healed a lot of my masculine wounds from there too.
Mm.
At the time, I had multiple partners, and so even after that, I broke away from almost half of my partners, and I continued doing sessions with her then, and she really saw in me this warrior priest that had the ability to guide other people, not only to the tantric realm, but to share the teachings of what Tantra really is about. It's about deep intimacy with your own energy, with your own masculine and feminine energy.
Mhm.
And I learned from there that it's really about using both your feminine and your masculine energy in conjunction to help each other.
Yeah.
I've always tried to not use the word balance a lot because I believe that everyone that the masculine and feminine energy is always shifting in terms of levels.
Sure.
And it's important to use one to serve the other too. So, I do have a lot of also divine feminine energy with me. I'm, very comfortable with my emotions, with vulnerability, and creating a space for others to do that too. So I use that essence to help propel my divine masculine energy. As a man in sound healing, I actually didn't even realize how rare that was.
Mm.
And so I had someone brought it up to me. I had a friend, she's a Korean woman who primarily does breathwork and coaching for Asian women. And when we connected, she was like, I'm so shocked that there is an Asian man in our community doing this kind of work. And I don't think it didn't really hit me until I had that conversation and I began looking at, my colleagues and my list of people that I knew. And it was mostly all women. There was a handful of men, but there was not too much. And most of the men were there to help the women in their practice, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So that's when it dawned on me how much of an opportunity I have given my position to serve other men too. And also, in many ways, I preach all the time that when there's something that you need to master within yourself, the best way is to teach it. It's actually one of the quotes that Yogi Bhajan uses in Kundalini Yoga that, when you become a teacher, when you teach something, you really have to walk the walk,
Yeah.
right? You can't just talk it anymore. You have to embody what it truly is. And that really spoke to me. If I was to really embody the essence of what a divine masculine and man has to be, I do need to teach it and share my experience of it too as well. And so that's how my Sacred Men Circle came to fruition too. I realized that there need to be a space for men to come and just share about what they go through as a man,
Yeah.
right? And then you mentioned earlier too, like there's a plethora of women's circles, divine feminine circles, yoni circles, womb healing, and it's absolutely beautiful, right? We're in the age of the feminine.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that really needs to happen because women are meant to propel to the higher powers in order for our world to change to align with where it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
And in my belief, men has that mission to support that elevation too.
Mm,
That's something that I've always believed in from the very beginning. A lot of it came from my mother, right? Helping her become the woman that she is and helping all the women that I've served in sound healing become the women that they're meant to be too. I realized that not only that we needed to help men become more aligned with their divine masculinity, but also allow them to be comfortable in expressing themselves as a man with other men. I think most men are really only vulnerable and share with other women, sometimes with their partners too as well.
mm,
But I also believe that there are a lot of things that men go through that really only other men can understand too.
sure.
And so that's the whole essence of what my masculine circles are meant to be is we keep it small and intimate, about 8 to 12 men. And it's for anyone that defines themselves as a man,
Right.
as the masculine energy. There's no limitation on gender or sexual orientation. Is if you define as the masculine energy, you're more than welcome to come. And it's set up as a space for us to just share our stories
Yeah.
and offer support and offer any kind of words of wisdom at it. And there's no real teaching, so to speak, about divine masculinity. Because for me, I believe that a lot of it comes from within, right? If you can open yourself up, share your story, and connect more people around you, there's a lot more opportunities for that sacred wisdom to flourish from within.
It sounds like it's about holding that space and creating that space because I think a lot of times there's a lot of judgment surrounding men in general who are, let's say, in their distorted masculine, right? So that judgment is perpetuated because, let's say, if they are in that distorted masculine energy, they're doing the sort of distorted behaviors, and then they just keep on getting beaten down because of those behaviors. And in order to get them to have that beautiful space to transcend the distorted masculine and move into the divine masculine, that space needs to be there. Somebody needs to hold that space for them. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I had a lot of men who are there because their wives or their girlfriends have sent them
Oh,
there.
interesting.
I, and I had one man, his ex girlfriend actually bought a ticket for him
Okay.
and told him that if you want to learn more about why we didn't work out, you should come to this.
Oh,
Right,
interesting.
because she's been to my sound baths before too as well. So it is true. I think the most common backgrounds for these men is one is that they have a distorted sense of what masculinity means to them, right?
Mhm.
And it stems from either the lack of a masculine figure growing up, a abusive masculine figure growing up too as well, or just distortion from the experiences that I had when I was younger through fraternities and groups of men that you associate with that you think are masculine, right? But I've also had a lot of men who have also been deprived of their masculinity as well,
Mhm.
whether it's through like sexual abuse, sexual trauma, or even physical abuse too as well. They're always being pushed down. Or I have some men who don't have as much masculine energy within them. They have more feminine energy. And there was never this conversation about how that's okay,
Yeah.
right? And that everyone does have different levels of energy within them. And just because you don't have a lot of masculine energy within you, even though you are a man, it doesn't make you any less of a man, right?
Yeah, of course, and that's something that you may have signed up for prior to incarnating, so that might be part of your soul
Right.
contract is that you are incarnated in a male body, but your feminine energy is something that you need to either cultivate or work with in order to really get to know when the right time is to use that masculine versus feminine energy as you were saying. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. It's been really inspiring for me as a space holder to do these men's circles because it makes me realize that the majority of men go through something similar. The details are obviously very different, which is based on their lives, but the themes of what men go through are generally the same too. And I realize this because in our men's circle, really all we're doing is just sharing.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, you can just feel this strong sense of connection of like brotherhood between all the guys. We afterwards we come and huddle and we do some breathing and some mass and core exercises, but you can feel this unification of brotherhood. And all we did was just share our stories.
Yeah.
And everyone always mentions that, like I never knew that other men go through the same. I thought I would go through this alone, right?
Right.
So I realized that a lot of men, they just feel lonely, even though they may have their wives and their partners and they have their guy friends around them, they still feel very alone,
Yeah.
right, when it comes to their heart. And that was the biggest realization to me is that, just men need to understand that they're not alone and that if they can have an understanding that what they go through is somewhat common, right, and that there are other men that can go through it, they don't push themselves down as hard in the process.
Yeah.
So I think that when some men realize they go through this alone, they think that they have a problem and it's unique to them.
Right. It's not unique to them in any way because if you think about it as a collective energy as well, the collective of the masculine energy is going through a lot of this transmuting. And so it's something that not only are you dealing with it within yourself, but you're dealing with the collective energies of it. And that's a lot to deal with. And especially when it's rooted in the same things that we all get rooted in, those distorted energies, even, distorted feminine, which is, abandonment, it's hurt, it's all of those energies that we've experienced that distort those energies. And yeah, if you're not talking about them, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay stuck where they are.
Right. That's one thing I mentioned too. I said, look, guys, we know that women are rising up in this time period, right? There are more women CEOs, there are more women in higher power, and we see a lot of support for women, right?
Mhm.
So it's up to us as men, if we want to be a part of that transition, we have to change ourselves
Yeah.
too. That's necessary.
Yeah. That's incredible. So, the more of these types of circles that I feel start popping up, I think it's going to be such a beautiful thing to see how it transforms the divine masculine energy as a collective. So, I commend you for doing this work cuz it's so super super important. And if anybody out there wants to join you in one of these circles, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find out about when you're having them?
Right. So I host these in person here in Southern California. We do it in Orange County twice a month, once in North Orange County and once in South Orange County. You can go through my Instagram. It's at Kyle Lam Sound Healing, or you can go through my website, kylelamsoundhealing.com, and you'll see the event listed on there too. And I'm eventually going to start doing them online through Zoom so we can connect with more men, not only here in the United States, but also around the world too as well, to build an even stronger connection and understanding that we don't go through this alone too. So that's in the work. But if you're here in Southern California, I would love the opportunity to hear your story and give you a safe place for you to share your story and hopefully embody more of that divine masculine energy within the process.
Yeah, thank you for that. Going back to your sound healing practices and everything that you offer at the moment, when you have your sound bath events, what can somebody expect if they've never done a sound bath before, if they've never done sound healing? What can they expect to experience while they're there?
Sure. I like to explain what a sound bath is like a musically guided meditation.
Okay, yeah.
And we're all really familiar with how music affects us internally, right?
100%.
Music really has that way to invoke emotions in our hearts. They give us clarity in our minds, and it really allows us to have that internal release, right?
Yeah.
And we're familiar with that when we hear a specific lyric in a song or a chord in a track. There's this aha moment
Yeah.
inside of us, and whatever is constricted inside of us gets released too. So with sound baths, we're really working with the foundations of music through notes, harmonics, frequency, and vibration. And we're being surrounded and immersed by different sounds and frequencies to allow us to fall into a very deep, relaxed state. And sound baths primarily work with the brain waves, not just the physical body, but primarily the brain, and allows us to fall into a theta brainwave state. When we're in a theta state, we can have this detachment from ourselves, so to speak, and begin this inner exploration of our bodies, our subconscious, our heart. and our spirit. Regardless of your experience of meditation, in fact, about 30% of each of my events are always newcomers. Studies have shown that novice meditators tend to have a much more profound experience their first time meditating versus experienced meditators. Of course, it's not to say that experienced meditators don't have a profound experience, but the more likelihood of the novice meditator having it is much more higher. So, regardless of your meditation experience, all you have to do is allow yourself to relax, to open up, to surrender, and to experience. And if you do those four things, your experience in a sound bath will be much more impactful and much more meaningful than trying to, let's say, listen to a guided meditation through someone's voice. The beauty about a sound bath, because it encompasses music in it, is that there's no linear direction, right? When we have a language in song, or when we have a guided meditation guiding someone,
Mhm.
in essence, it's kind of linear, right? It can only go in a couple directions. Where in a sound bath, because there's no language or no direction, you are the own conductor of your own experience, right? Every sound, every melody, every frequency is interpreted differently by individuals.
Right.
How you interpret sound and what your emotional response from it can be vastly different than someone else's. And that's the beauty about sound baths, is that there's no limitation or restrictions on what it can give and who can attend it.
How often would you recommend somebody do a sound bath? Because obviously it depends on the person's experience on whether or not they're going to be releasing something, how intense the experience might be. So what would be your general recommendation?
Yeah, I would say at least twice a month.
Mhm.
I've had attendees come every week. I've had attendees come once a month, and I even have some attendees who come multiple times a week. It just really depends on how much you go through mentally and emotionally, and physically too as well. Because sound bath has the potential to benefit you in really whatever way that you want, whether it's you want to release some physical tension in the body, whether you're carrying some mental fatigue, whether you're trying to brainstorm about a creative project, whether you're trying to unravel a complicated situation that you're involved in, whatever that you are going through, a sound bath has the potential to aid you on figuring that out too. So
Mm,
it all really depends on, one is what you're going through, but two is how comfortable you are embracing that intensity that can come from a really powerful healing experience. For some people, they're used to that intensity, so they can handle it, every single week. But, there are a lot of people who are a little bit more sensitive than others too as well. And it is true that too much sound bath can also be overstimulating and can cause aggravation too. Because in many ways, sound bath is meant to
yeah.
amplify too as well. So if you're not in a very good mental state and you're stuck and fixated on that too much aggravation can also be detrimental to your body and mind, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're kind of reminding me of when I first started going through my spiritual awakening process and I was going through some big, dark nights of the soul, some big ego deaths. And I was basically just kind of a raw nerve walking around because I didn't really know. I didn't know what was happening to me. I actually had no idea I was going through my spiritual awakening at the time. I couldn't listen to music. And music is a really big
Mm,
part of my life. I love music. And every time I would listen to music, I would just uncontrollably start crying. And I couldn't stop crying no matter what happened. So I had to literally stop listening to music. It was almost a year before I could listen to music again and not just break down into tears. And so if
right.
if anybody is going through their spiritual awakening, if you're in that space, then of course, if you're comfortable just sobbing in front of people, then that's fine. But for me personally, like I didn't want to just be walking down the street and just cry uncontrollably for no reason. It's one of those things where you have to kind of, yeah, I think you have to gauge where you are in your process. And if it's something that is going to be too much for you to handle, then, you can dial it back. If you're cool going, 3 times a week and it makes you feel amazing, then yeah, go for it. It sounds like that's the case. Yeah.
Right. And the beauty about sound bath is that there's a spectrum of artists that are in sound healing too. And every practitioner's sound bath is different.
Yeah.
Mine's a little bit more on the intense side because I do carry a lot of that masculine energy, and it's meant for you to do deep emotional work. But a lot of sound baths are just meant about relaxation, a quick mental break. There's some sound baths that are geared more towards divine feminine energy. I mean, I have a colleague here in Los Angeles who works, like, her sound bath production is 7 to 8 women, and they all play different instruments from harp, singing, and so there's this connection to the divine feminine
Mm.
from their sound bath. Every person's sound bath is different, and I always encourage everyone to explore other people's sound bath because you never know what inspiration that you can get from them too. But also is that depending on where you're at right now in your life or what you're looking for too, right? There could be a sound bath experience that could benefit you more than another one, right? That's
100%.
the beauty about
Yeah.
sound bath. Yeah, that's the beauty about it.
Yeah. We've talked about on this podcast in previous episodes about practitioners and, whether you're looking to do, let's say, a cacao ceremony, or whether you are going to get an Akashic record reading, or if you are using any sort of modality, it really does change as you go along your journey. So the same people that I resonated with 10 years ago are not necessarily the same people that I'm drawn to now, and it doesn't mean that that person doesn't have a really beautiful resonance. It just means that you just sort of go along your journey and you're taking different paths or different energy pathways, and you happen to be gravitating towards what you need right now in this moment. And so, because that
Mhm.
changes on a pretty regular basis, as you said, if you try various different modalities or various different sound baths, somebody might come to you and it'll resonate for them for 2 years. And then all of a sudden they might need to move on to, let's say, a different modality or a different practitioner. And I feel that that's pretty normal in this journey.
That was my whole experience with Tantra, right? Because everything in my toolkit, my spiritual toolkit I was using, it wasn't giving me the results I needed.
Yeah.
In fact, it wasn't deteriorating me, but of course, but I wasn't moving forward. So I had to seek out a different one, a whole different one that I never had any experience before.
Mm,
And from it, I had one of the biggest transformations of my life too.
yeah.
So I always encourage everyone, you never know what you can learn from other modalities, and that as long as you feel that draw towards it,
Hmm.
if you trust that instinct from within, you'll have a lot of benefit from it because in the end, your heart knows what it wants, even though it may
Absolutely.
not understand it, but it knows what it wants.
Absolutely. I encourage all of you, if you're listening to this and you're wondering whether or not this is something that you want to do, I always say just put your hand to your heart, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask your heart. Your heart will never, ever lie to you, ever.
Yes.
So, the last question I have for you is, there are obviously a lot of people out there that are looking for their spiritual gifts. They're kind of trying to figure out what it is that they're here to do. And in that process, I know that people get drawn to various different modalities and to practice them in order to then go forth and teach or practice. So I saw that you offer, training for people who want to do sound healing. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I had this realization that what I was doing in sound healing should be shared with other people. And also not only to be shared, but also shared in the manner that I believe was the best way to offer sound healing in the community too as well. So I do offer training programs. I do offer public group training programs here in Southern California, as well as teaching privately one-on-one. And I think the beauty about my method of teaching is that because I do have a musical background, regardless of whether a student has musical background or not, I can teach them proponents of musical theory into their sound healing production so that not only that when you complete the program, you have a lot more confidence in playing these instruments, but you also have an understanding of the musical aspect of it too, because that's very important in sound bath production. In this day and age, you can buy almost any sound healing instruments on Google, on Amazon, very easily.
Mm,
Right? So it's very easy to become quote unquote a sound practitioner if you just want to call yourself that. But the true artistry of sound bath comes from the understanding of how music affects us internally.
yeah.
In my training programs, I teach you a variety of things, but the intention behind it really is to give you the confidence to play these instruments correctly. Because the true wisdom, like I mentioned before, that comes from sound healing is from your own relationship with your instrument.
Mm,
The more that you can understand how to play these instruments correctly, the singing bowls and the gongs, the more that you'll have a better understanding of what it is that you need to do for yourself, but also what you need to do for a sound bath that you're producing for your community. I teach you about the gongs. I have about 7 to 9 different planetary gongs that we work with, and there's different levels in gong playing. And the one that we teach is just level one. There's curiosity about the gong too as well,
mm,
but it's to teach you all the specific techniques and methods in proper gong playing so that when you play the gong on your own, right, you'll develop a very deeper relationship, an intimate relationship with your gong too as well. So
mm.
you know exactly how it wants to be played.
Right.
I always tell people with these instruments, what you're doing is that you're not just playing these instruments and that these instruments are not just these physical items, they're energetic entities of their own,
Yeah.
right? So if you can develop a very intimate relationship with these instruments, you're synchronizing your energy with them too as well. And it'll go to a point where you're not playing the instrument, but the instrument is actually playing you.
Is it similar to, let's say, like a channeling, if you will? Is that the
Yes,
same kind of thing? Okay.
yes, that's what I believe, at least from my experience. That's what happens to me. There's something that comes through me
Yeah.
when I do sound healing, and it's like a mixture of like me and my different spiritual guides or whatever that comes through me that creates the kind of experience that I create.
Right.
So if you can have this relationship with your instruments too, that's how you can become better at sound healing, and that's how you can also learn more about yourself in the process. We also dive a little bit into some chanting. Chanting is very important while you're gong playing because when you're chanting in your mind or just even whispering, you're putting yourself in a trance state on your own, right?
Mm,
And if
mhm.
you're if you're in a trance state while you're playing, you already know exactly what to do next before trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So, just as a clarification, you mentioned planetary gongs. What does that mean exactly?
Planetary gongs are gongs that have a similar frequency to the corresponding planet. So
Oh, okay.
there was this there was this mathematician that was able to calculate the exact frequency of each planet. The gong percussion company Paisi was able to use that mathematical formula into these gongs so that the frequency that's coming out from these gongs corresponds with it. Obviously, it's not exact because with our human ears, we can't really hear the spectrum of
Mm,
what these
mhm.
planets
Yeah.
emits, right?
Yeah.
But it has more of that astrological aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
So when you're being enveloped in the frequencies of, let's say, Pluto, that you're, bringing more of that depth into yourself in the process. You're bringing more of that intensity from within, and you're comfortable going through that rebirth, right? When we're enveloped in the frequencies and sounds of the earth gong, we feel more of that grounding, with that connection to divine mother and divine feminine, and so forth with the other planetary gongs too as well.
Yeah. Cool. Kyle, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has just been a really beautiful conversation, and I wanted to again ask you to just let all of our listeners know how they can get information on the events, on your sound baths, on training, all of that. So your socials, your website, it would be super helpful for everyone.
Sure. So my website is www.kylelamsoundhealing.com. And on that website, you can learn a little bit more about me and my work. You can see my list of events that I have. I'm here in Southern California. You can get information about my public and my private one-on-one sound bath training programs. And I also help my Tantra teacher produce Tantra retreats here in Southern California too, if anyone's interested in that. I'm very active on Instagram. That's my main social media platform. It's at KyleLamSoundHealing.com. And the beauty about this Instagram is that we do Instagram live sound baths about every week and a half or 2 weeks or so. And those I leave completely on free on my Instagram.
Oh,
So when
great.
everyone ever needs a quick reset, they can take a listen to it. But it's also a good way for people to get a preview of what my in-person sound bath productions are like. And also for those that are curious about the techniques and some of the basic methods of using sound baths, they can get a visual idea of it from my Instagram too. I welcome everyone to, send me a DM, say hi. I'm always open to conversations. You're always talking with me. I'm not someone on my team on my Instagram too as well. And I love meeting more and more people in the community. So if I have the opportunity to connect with you, to serve you, to uplift you in any way that I can, I would honor the opportunity to.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And just to let you know, it is Kyle Lam. So KYLELAM. So when you're spelling the website and Instagram and all of that, I just wanted to give the correct spelling. Thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com.
On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111.
Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.
Thank you.